It is still dark when it happens. Not the soft dark before sunrise, but the heavy kind that presses down on the earth and makes every sound sharper. High above the sleeping countryside of southern England, an aircraft shudders violently. Metal screams, wind howls, and inside that aircraft a single man is about to fall farther than any human being should survive. Not glide, not parachute, fall, straight down into the black. In the next few minutes, gravity will do what it always does. And yet somehow, this man will live. If you want more content like this, subscribe now and comment below. Years later, doctors will shake their heads. Pilots will argue. Engineers will run the numbers again and again. And many will quietly say the same thing. This should not have been possible. It is the night of May 24, 1942. The Second World War has entered a brutal phase for Britain. And Bomber Command is under constant pressure to strike deep into occupied Europe, night after night, at terrible cost. Young men barely out of training are being sent into the dark, flying heavy bombers through flak and fighters, trusting machines that are often pushed far beyond their limits. One of those men is Sergeant Nicholas Stephen Alkermaid of the Royal Air Force. He is 21 years old, a tail gunner by trade, calm, disciplined, and known by his crew as steady under pressure. Tonight, he is flying in a Handley Page Halifax bomber, part of a raid heading east across the North Sea and into Germany. Inside the aircraft, the air is cold and thin. The engines vibrate through the fuselage. Alkermaid is sealed into his tail turret, surrounded by perspex and steel, scanning the darkness behind them for enemy fighters. His job is lonely by design. He is the eyes at the back of the aircraft. If danger comes, he will be the first to see it, and likely the last to escape. The crew has done this before. The routine is familiar. Hours of tension, broken by moments of sudden terror. But nothing about this night will be routine. As the Halifax approaches the target area near the German city of Bremen, searchlights snap on below like white claws reaching for the sky. Anti-aircraft fire begins to bloom in dark bursts around the bomber. The aircraft jolts as near misses punch the air. Then it happens fast. Too fast. A German night fighter, a Junkers Ju-88, slips into position beneath them, almost invisible against the ground. Cannon fire tears into the Halifax from below. Fuel lines rupture. The aircraft shudders again, this time with a deeper, wounded sound. Inside the tail turret, Alkermaid feels the impact through his spine. Warning lights flash. Smoke begins to creep into the fuselage. Over the intercom, voices shout. The Halifax is on fire. Not a small fire, a fuel-fed inferno that spreads with terrifying speed. Flames race along the interior, turning the aircraft into a furnace at 20,000 feet. Training takes over. Alkermaid knows the drill. If the order comes, he must abandon the turret and bail out. But when he tries to move, he realizes the worst. The fire has cut off his escape route. The narrow passage leading forward is a wall of flame. Heat pours into the turret. His oxygen mask begins to melt. The perspex around him cracks and blisters. He has seconds, maybe less. There is no parachute with him in the turret. His parachute is stored inside the fuselage, now unreachable. For a moment, his mind races. Every survival instinct screams the same thing. Stay in the aircraft. Anything is better than falling from this height without a parachute, but then the fire reaches the turret itself. The temperature becomes unbearable. Breathing hurts. His gloves begin to smoke. Staying means burning alive, and Alkermaid makes a decision that no one should ever have to make. He opens the turret hatch. The wind hits him like a solid object. The roar is deafening. The aircraft is already breaking apart, flames trailing behind it as it drops toward the earth. Below him is nothing but darkness. No lights, no landmarks. Just a black void that seems to go on forever. Later, he will say there was no panic in that moment, only clarity. Fire or fall. And so, without a parachute, without any hope of survival, Nicholas Alkermaid pushes himself out of the turret and into the night. For a split second, there is silence. Then the fall begins. The cold slams into him, shocking and violent. The wind tears at his body, spinning him end over end. You can almost feel it, the air ripping past, the sense of speed growing with every second. The bomber vanishes above him, a burning shape disappearing into cloud. There is no ground in sight, no sense of distance, only the knowledge that he is falling from more than 18,000 feet. At first, his thoughts scatter. The noise, the cold, the impossible speed. But then something strange happens. The fear dulls. Time stretches. The roar of the wind becomes constant, almost steady. His body reaches terminal velocity, falling at roughly 120 miles per hour. He is no longer accelerating, and he is simply dropping, locked in a deadly balance with the air. Below him, unknown to Alkermaid, lies a dense forest near the village of Schmallenberg, in western Germany. Tall pine trees pack closely together, their branches thick and layered. The ground beneath is uneven and soft, covered with snow that has lingered late into spring. None of this is visible from the sky. None of it is part of his decision. He is not aiming. He cannot aim. He can only fall. The descent lasts less than 2 minutes, but it feels much longer. Long enough for thoughts to surface and fade. Long enough for memories to flash without warning. Long enough for a young man to accept that he is about to die. Later, he will say he felt no pain during the fall. No sense of impact approaching. Just the cold wind and the dark. Then the forest reaches up. And the first contact is not the ground. It is branches, high ones. They snap and tear as his body crashes through them. Each branch steals a little speed. Each impact twists and spins him, spreading the force across his body instead of concentrating it in one place. You can almost hear it, the cracking wood, the rushing air, the violent tumble downward through the trees. Then the lower branches, thicker, slower to break. And finally, the snow-covered forest floor rises to meet him. When he hits, the world goes white. The impact drives the breath from his lungs. Pain explodes through his back and legs. And then, silence. Nicholas Alkermaid lies broken but alive, half buried in snow and pine needles in enemy territory, having just fallen farther than any man should survive. He does not know it yet. But what comes next will be almost as unbelievable as the fall itself. For several minutes he cannot move. The cold bites hard now, seeping into his clothes. His body trembles uncontrollably. Slowly, painfully, he becomes aware of himself again. He is conscious. That alone feels impossible. He tests his fingers. They move. His legs scream in pain, but they respond. He is alive. Stunned, injured, but alive. Around him, the forest is eerily quiet. The sounds of battle are far away now. Somewhere in the distance, the Halifax crashes and burns, marking the end of his crew. Alkermaid is alone, deep inside Germany, without weapons, without supplies, and with injuries that should have killed him. He pulls himself upright against a tree trunk, every movement slow and deliberate. His back is badly hurt. One leg feels wrong, weak and unstable. Later examinations will reveal that he has fractured his pelvis, damaged his right leg, and suffered severe bruising and internal injuries. Injuries that should have been fatal at that speed. But somehow his body has held together. Before he can think about escape or hiding, voices cut through the trees. German soldiers. They move carefully through the forest, rifles raised, drawn by the sound of the crash and the burning wreckage nearby. They do not expect to find a man alive here. They certainly do not expect to find one without a parachute. When they see Alkermaid sitting in the snow, pale and shaking, they stop in disbelief. He is taken into custody without resistance. There is no fight left in him. The soldiers help him to his feet, supporting his weight as they lead him away. Some stare openly at his back. He's searching for a parachute pack that is not there. Others exchange glances, confused and suspicious. A fall from that height without a parachute is not survivable. Everyone knows that. At the local Luftwaffe headquarters, the disbelief turns into interrogation. German officers question him repeatedly. How did you get down? Where is your parachute? What trick are you hiding? Alchemade answers simply. He had no parachute. He jumped to escape the fire. He fell through trees and snow. That is all. The officers do not believe him. Doctors are called. X-rays are taken. His injuries are examined in detail. They expect to find evidence of a parachute harness or signs that he bailed out normally. There is none. His story remains the same. Eventually, one German medical officer begins to piece it together. The forest, the trees, the snow. The way the branches would have broken his fall, slowing him in stages instead of one brutal stop. Reluctantly, the Germans accept the truth. They issue Alchemade a certificate officially recording that he survived a fall from approximately 18,000 feet without a parachute, not as propaganda, not as a joke, as a medical and military fact. Even his captors understand that they are witnessing something extraordinary, but survival is only the beginning. As he is transported to a prisoner of war camp, word of his fall spreads quietly among guards and doctors. Some treat him with a strange mix of respect and disbelief. Others avoid the subject entirely, as if speaking about it might invite bad luck. Alchemade himself does not boast. He does not dramatize it. To him, it was a simple choice between two deaths, and one happened to be slower than expected. In the months that follow, as his injuries heal, he will replay the fall in his mind again and again. Not with pride, with confusion, with questions that have no clear answers. Why did he live when so many others did not? Why did the forest catch him just right? Why did his body endure forces that should have shattered it completely? These questions will follow him long after the war ends. But before any of that, there is still the cold forest, the fire-lit sky, the stunned silence after impact, and a young British airman sitting in the snow, breathing hard, alive against all logic. In the next part of this story, we will follow what happened after the fall, how the world reacted when the war ended, how doctors and scientists tried to explain the impossible, and how Nicholas Alchemade carried the weight of survival for the rest of his life. When Nicholas Alchemade is finally moved from the small local station to a larger prisoner of war facility, his body is still in shock. The journey is slow and painful. Every bump sends a jolt through his damaged pelvis and spine. German medics do what they can, not out of kindness, but professional curiosity. They are dealing with a man who should not exist, a man whose survival challenges everything they understand about physics, medicine, and human limits. At the camp infirmary, doctors examine him again, carefully, methodically. They check his spine, his legs, his ribs. They expect massive internal bleeding. They expect crushed organs. Instead, they find severe bruising, fractures, and shock, but nothing immediately fatal. One doctor reportedly mutters that if the snow had been thinner or the trees spaced wider, Alchemade would have died instantly. Another says the branches likely forced his body to tumble instead of stopping all at once. Each impact reduced speed just enough. Not luck alone. A brutal sequence of chance events stacked perfectly. Alchemade listens quietly as they talk around him, in a language he only partly understands. He does not feel lucky. He feels sore, exhausted, and deeply aware that every man he flew with that night is dead. That knowledge sits heavier than his injuries. Survival is not a victory when you are the only one left. As days pass, his condition stabilizes. He cannot walk properly at first. Movement is slow. Pain is constant. But he heals, slowly. The human body, once spared destruction, does what it has always done. It adapts. It repairs. The Germans, still uneasy, document everything: measurements, estimates of height, weather conditions, tree density, snow depth. They need records, not for propaganda, but because this case will be argued long after the war. Other prisoners hear the story and don't believe it at first. A fall without a parachute is something men joke about, not survive. But Alkmaar does not exaggerate. He tells it plainly. Fire blocked the escape. He jumped. Trees, snow, that's all. The simplicity of the story makes it harder to doubt. Over time, guards begin to ask questions too. Quiet ones, curious ones. Some look at him as if he has cheated death. Others as if death simply forgot him. Alkmaar does not encourage either idea. He focuses on getting through each day. Roll call, meals, rest, recovery. When the war finally ends in May 1945, Alkmaar is still in captivity. Germany collapses around the camps. Guards disappear. Allied forces arrive. And suddenly, after years of war and months of imprisonment, he is free, thin, scarred, still walking with a limp, but alive. Back in Britain, the story spreads quickly. At first, it sounds like rumour, exaggeration, a camp tale, but then medical records appear, German documents, witness statements, the certificate confirming the fall. And disbelief turns into fascination. Newspapers pick it up. Doctors request interviews. Military officials quietly review training manuals and survival data, wondering if anything useful can be learned from what was never meant to be repeatable. Alkmaar is brought in for examinations by British doctors. X-rays are taken again. Old fractures are studied. Sorted, they confirm what the Germans recorded: the height, the injuries, the absence of parachute damage. There is no evidence of trickery, no hidden harness, no late opening chute, just a fall, slowed in stages by trees and snow. Some experts attempt to calculate the forces involved: terminal velocity, deceleration through branches, distribution of impact across limbs and torso. The math suggests survival was possible, but only in the narrowest margins. Change any one factor and the outcome flips instantly from survival to death. A different angle, bare ground, fewer trees, no snow. Any of it would have ended him. Alkmaar becomes known as the man who fell from the sky. He does interviews, but reluctantly. He dislikes attention. He dislikes being called lucky. He prefers the truth, even if it is harder to accept. He survived because circumstances aligned once, not because humans can do this, not because it can be repeated. It was not a method. It was an exception. As the years pass, the story does not fade. If anything, it grows stronger. It appears in aviation journals, military survival discussions, medical case studies, and always with the same conclusion: no one should attempt this. No one should expect to survive it. Nicholas Alkmaar did not beat physics. Physics allowed him through once. Privately, the experience stays with him in quieter ways. He dreams of falling, of wind, of darkness, of the moment just before impact. He lives a normal life, but the memory never leaves. When people ask him what he felt during the fall, he does not speak of fear. He speaks of cold, of noise, of the strange calm that came when there was nothing left to do. There is also guilt, survivor's guilt, a feeling shared by many who returned when others did not. Alkmaar knows his crew died in flames while he fell free. He does not see his survival as heroic. He sees it as unfinished business with life. In later years, he donates his fall certificate and documents to museums, not for fame, but for accuracy. He wants the story preserved correctly, without exaggeration, without myth, just facts: a date, a place, a height, a fall, a survival. Nicholas Alkmaar dies in 1987 at the age of 66, not in the sky, not in war, but quietly, as all men eventually do. His death does not change the story. If anything, it seals it. Because decades later, with better science and better data, the conclusion remains the same. What happened on May 24, 1942, near Schmallenberg, Germany, was real. A British tail gunner jumped from a burning bomber at roughly 18,000 feet without a parachute and lived. Not because it was safe, not because it was smart, but because in one narrow moment of war, chance, physics, and human endurance collided in the only way that allowed survival. And that is why the story endures, not as a lesson in bravery, not as a guide to survival, but as a reminder that even in a world ruled by rules and limits, there are moments so rare, so precise, that they defy belief. Moments where a man falls through fire, darkness, trees, and snow, and stands up again. You can almost feel it now. The freezing wind, the snapping branches, the silence after impact. A life that should have ended in the sky, carried forward instead. Once. And only once. If you want more content like this, subscribe now and comment below.